My name is Emily Yee Clare, and I am the Residence's Anti-Oppression Program Coordinator. I think often when we talk about experience of marginalization, we tend to focus a bit more on facts and figures and saying like these groups are disproportionately hurt this way, this group is disproportionately represented in this way. While these things are very important, I think we need to also have a bit more of a human aspect of it in terms of how it impacts us as individuals and how we experience emotions in very different ways depending on our positionality. We really have to create communities where people kind of harness the power of their emotions, but also realize that sometimes it's all right not to understand someone's experience, but to give space for that and to listen. Often we hear in anti-oppression work that many say white allies feel really guilty, a thing called white guilt. And so guilt in itself is not a bad thing. I think it can be a very good way of taking responsibility and recognizing how history has brought us all to a very specific point. It's not about whose fault it is or whose fault it is and who's the victim, who's the perpetrator. It's how we all play into the system. So if we create a space where we can talk about these emotions and say that, yes, your emotions are valid, now what are we going to do about them? And kind of creating community accountability around that structure and saying like, well, if you're feeling uncomfortable about this, what is this? It's also about creating support networks for students so that they can access the support in the way that they want. So for example, if we don't really want to create a space where we're telling students that they're experiencing racism, if that's not the language that they want to use it. However, if they are experiencing different forms of racism, that there are the mechanisms in place to ensure that they get support and they know that there's a space for them within the residence structure. Equity and accessibility, I personally feel, should never be just a checklist of like, okay, do we have this number of ethnic minorities? Do we have a wheelchair accessible route to the room? It's so much more than that, and we have to be broadening our understanding of equity and accessibility to beyond a checklist.